In the title of this video, you guys can see that I'm going to be giving you guys a review on the subtle art of not giving a from somebody who has social anxiety and who is consistently struggling with learning how to be themselves. So the first thing that I would say about this book is that at first glance I bought it because this is something that I really struggle with. I care what people think way too much. So when I first got this book, that's the first thing that came to mind was I don't want to give an F. I don't want to care. So that's pretty much why I bought this book. I'd say if you have social anxiety or you struggle with expressing yourself or fear being judged, that this is a really good starter book. It's not that long. How many pages is this book? It's 195 pages, which is a really not too bad. It's not super heavy. The words that he uses aren't really big and confusing. Like, the concepts are really simple. Now, the biggest takeaways that I got from this book are basically that we're not as special as we think we are, and that we're actually quite ordinary to other people. And he says that to take the pressure off of us so that we understand that it's creating this pressure. His belief in this book is that when we assume that we're so extraordinary, that we're so special, we're doing too much and we're placing too much pressure on ourselves, and that's what causes us to care so much, because we've put all this pressure on ourselves. As someone that struggles with the idea of failing and is scared of failing, I'm getting over that now, because I understand that failure is, if you don't understand this too, failure is the root of success. If you're scared to fail and you don't fail, then you're never going to succeed, because you have to fail to succeed. But in this book, he basically is talking too about the importance of failing and the acceptance of it, because if you choose to not fail and you try to avoid it all the time, then you're never going to succeed and you're always going to be disappointed, and it's just going to cause a continuous cycle of being upset that you aren't doing good in life and not doing better because you're scared of failing, and it just becomes a cycle. He talks about also the importance of rejection. So if you have issues with rejection, this is an amazing book for you to read. Now, he has one concept in here that I'm not 100% in agreement with, and that's the idea that I mentioned earlier, that we might not necessarily all be special. Now, I understand what his perspective is just different on it, and I agree that there are a lot of people that are. I actually don't believe that. I believe that nobody is ordinary, but in this book he's basically saying that everybody is ordinary. And I understand his perspective is to help people's mindsets, people who feel too much pressure from thinking that they have all these expectations on them that are super heavy. So from that perspective, I understand it. But from the actual standpoint, I believe that everybody is special. I believe that everybody is unique and has their own things to offer that are important and worth that are different and unique. He also explains how we're going to suffer regardless, so there's no way that you can basically get out of suffering. If you have a family, you're going to suffer for some reason. If you don't have a family, you're going to suffer for some reason. If you're rich, you're going to suffer for some reason. If you're poor, you're going to suffer for some reason. And that basically, regardless of what you do or don't do, suffering is going to be a part of your life. You're a human being, and there's no basically escaping suffering in some way, shape, or form, which is really good. Mark Manson also explains how chasing emotions is not a good thing. So chasing happiness is not necessarily a good thing, because as humans, we're going to feel things across the spectrum. And to expect to always be happy is not correct, because as human beings, we're going to experience all these different plethora of emotions. We're going to experience sadness, anger, happiness, but they're all feelings that come and they go. And they can all work for our greater good, and we have to just change our perspective to see that even when bad things happen, we can still use them to our good. Now, that doesn't mean ignore your feelings, but it means that feel your feelings and learn the lesson that you're supposed to learn, so you don't repeat the same problem over and over and over again. But basically, don't follow your emotions necessarily, or consistently have this goal that is, I need to be happy all the time, because that's not a good metric for a realistic life. So one of my favorite chapters in the book, or parts of a chapter, is freedom through commitment. So basically in this book, he explains how Mark Manson was somebody who traveled a lot, and he had the belief that when you make one decision, that you're no longer free. So say that I'm in a committed relationship, I would no longer be free, and you're closing off your options to other things. And that's what he says. He's basically explaining that when you commit to something, you do have freedom. And just because you close a certain gap, it means that you have freedom and it's in a different way. It's just a perspective switch, and he explains it really well how freedom can be through commitment of different things. Overall, I'd say if you struggle with fear of rejection, fear of being yourself, you care too much about what other people think, and you just struggle with anxiety in general, that you should get this book. It's a completely different perspective and an idea on how to not centralize your feelings and how to begin to break down those mental barriers.